I'm gonna keep it on, right? I'll just keep it on but not talk. I'll keep it on but not talk. I'll just keep it on but just not talk. Okay, cool. That way I won't touch anything.
All right. Good evening. I will now call the May 10th, 2022 meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate right, Vice Chair Marcus LeGrand, Director Amy Tatum, Director Carrie McPherson Douglas, Director Shamiko Montgomery, and Director Shirley Olson. To my immediate left, Superintendent Stephen Cook, Deputy Superintendent Laura Nordquist, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. I am Melissa Barnes-Delakia, Chair of the Board. Closed captioning of tonight's meeting is being provided. We have Erin Trimble and Caitlin Oldham joining us for ASL interpretation. Tonka, I might get your last name, I'm very apologetic. Tonka Formigal is providing a live Spanish interpretation of tonight's meeting on our BLS School Board YouTube page, and we're happy to have Tonka back. She also translated at our listening session. A quick note, we are actually meeting now at 5:30 for our regular board meeting, but we did have a budget committee meeting at 4 p.m. and wanted to just note for people, if they did not attend that and are interested in the budget, there is a budget packet available online, as well as the recording. There was not a lot of discussion in this second meeting that we had because, one, we have an amazing multi-page packet that was developed for us, and our packet has really come to the point in these most recent years where it answers almost every question you might have. And then we also were able to submit, both the budget committee elected members and appointed members were able to submit questions and answers. We did not go through all those questions and answers, but they are all available in the meeting packet online. So if anyone says, wow, there wasn't a lot of discussion, we just wanted, afterwards we were talking, I was speaking with the chair, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on that. So all of those materials, as well as those questions and their answers, are available online. With that, we will move to item number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remove your hats, stand, and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move to item number 3, which is our review of the agenda. Are there any changes, Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda. However, we did modify a couple of positions on one of our presentations Monday morning, and so we'll draw attention to those when we get to them.
Thank you. Fellow board members, are there any changes requested to the agenda? All right, seeing no requests for changes to the agenda stands, and we will now move into item number 4, district recognitions and our Champion for Students Award, led by Superintendent Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. At this time, I would like to invite Jamie Brentano, Jeff Papke, and Olivia Rooker up to the front with me. So we're here to celebrate 2 educators today, and I'm excited also to have Olivia. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the things she thinks about these educators as well. So, Jamie Brentano teaches agricultural sciences, and Jeff Papke teaches metals at Mountain View High School. They also serve as advisors to Ben's renowned FFA program, which currently includes more than 180 students in our high schools throughout the area. It is a huge program that supports the growth and development of so many students here in our region. The pair's Agricultural Science and Technology program was named Best in the State in 2019, additionally. The more I have learned about the FFA program, the more impressed I am. And this is a guy who grew up in Dodge City, Kansas, driving a tractor. FFA is about agriculture, yes, but it's also about leadership, public speaking, and about teamwork. Our program here does not do anything in half measures. Go to the classroom where the team meets you, and you'll see a room absolutely jam-packed with banners showcasing all the program's state titles and wins. It's an incredible sight. Or take this week when the program is preparing for its annual banquet. This is no ordinary banquet. Everything from the food served to the awards handed out are showcase the program itself. The smoked pork will come from a hog raised and procured from a local farmer, will be butchered by our culinary students, with sauces created also by our students. The end-of-the-year plaques and awards were designed in-house and crafted by hand by our medal students. Jeff and Jamie also work hard to support the program. During a recent career development event, they were at school at 5 a.m. to drive students to Albany and back for 3 straight days to make sure that the students could compete at the state level. In late July and early August, when many educators are able to take a much-needed breather, these two are hard at work helping students prepare for their county fair. A true measure of their dedication and impact comes from their students. Olivia Rooker is a senior and president of the chapter, calls the FFA classroom like a home to her, and says Mr. Papke and Miss Brentano are a huge part of that, saying they are like second parents to me. They play a huge role in my life and are the wisest people I know. They are so open and willing to help you learn and grow. Olivia says you two have helped create a warm environment where everyone feels welcome, whether they come from a farming background or are just interested in learning more. She's far from alone, as many students share they feel welcomed, inspired, and encouraged, and develop confidence while participating in this program. Jamie and Jeff, thank you both for your service to the FFA program. Thank you for building such meaningful experiences for students where they're able to shine and grow. We applaud you both. Jamie Brentano, Jeff Papke, you are our champions for students. Thank you. All right. Now I'm excited to hear from you all. So let's start with Jamie.
First of all, thank you. We're honored to be here and honored to have such amazing students, not only just Olivia, but many back at the Ag Room. And we just want to give you a little bit of a brief overview of what exactly the program looks like beyond what you shared. So to start, we have just some amazing students that make what we do so much fun. You know, yes, we're busy and we have early mornings and we're, you know, technically stepping away from getting the pig and selling some plants, but it's because we have students that make it so great. So we together teach what we consider the ag program. So we have anything from plant science to veterinary medicine, animal science and natural resources to leadership and various levels of metal technology, where they get to learn anything from design work to projects like building a whole trailer. So we have lots of hands-on, which I think is what draws those students into our program. So they get to not only learn about the subject, but how to do it, and that's where FFA comes into play, is that then they get to compete with it, and that's what a lot of students enjoy, is that they can apply this skill in a way that they can take it to the industry. So like one of the competitions we went to was vet science, and so teaching vet science in the classroom, they get to learn about what veterinarian does and then gets to go compete in it. So handling animals, identifying parasites and equipment, and so that's what is so great about our program, is that everything is connected and integral, and FFA exists because of agriculture education. And so just honored that we get to do what we do, and Jeff's gonna go a little bit more about what students get to do with that.
Yes, thank you so much. It was awesome when we heard, and very humbling. And to pick up where Jamie left off, you know, as we have these students and they're learning to do in the classroom, and they're doing to learn, which is part of our FFA motto. And then we get into earning to live and living to serve. And so we're trying to grow the students above and beyond just when they graduate, you know, wishing them good luck. No, it's how do we set them up for that, and through the classroom education and through the CDEs and the contests, then these students can find that path and find that passion on what do they want to be, whether it might be a student who's headed off to Oklahoma State to study animal science, or a student that's going to Oregon State to study communication, or the student that's heading up to Seattle because they want to be an underwater welder, and they can walk out being certified welders and certified by Elanco Animal Health on proper animal husbandry. And so it's really working with the students to find that passion, to help them set up not just that you know you need to go to a university. No, it's what does that career path look like for you, and how can we build and instill that work ethic and the desire and that passion for them. And probably the last thing in that living to serve is, how do we teach them just how to be good people? And really working and giving back to the community through the community service, through the different events that we do, whether it's the kids writing Christmas cards to give to the elderly in some of the different assisted living homes that we have around here, or it's volunteering making quilts and donating them for students, or it's working with some of our different groups like Ducks Unlimited or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, some of their projects. So it's instilling that giving back, and trying to show them that it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a community, and how do we help them be part of that community and be great people. And above and beyond, we've got great kids, and we are incredibly lucky. We just get to drive the bus and point them in a direction, literally and figuratively. And if we didn't have great students like Olivia, we're just very lucky we have those kind of kids. So I'm going to let her finish up.
Wait a minute, I want to ask Olivia a question. So just real quickly, so Olivia, you've got a chance to live in this world, and now you got to follow them speaking. So I'm just going to say, how's it been? How's it been for you?
It's been an honor, I will say. When you said that I said that they are the wisest people I know, that statement sounds so true. They're willing to offer you advice when you need it. They're willing to let you know where you need to grow and will help you get there, where that growth is. I definitely think I started FFA my 8th grade year, so I stepped in as a young Discovery member. That's the first chance you get to step into FFA. And little did I know stepping into that classroom would determine my future. Ever since that day, I've stepped into that classroom every single day, and I have learned how to grow as an individual and as a leader, and to be a member in the community that truly wants to help others. Without these two, I wouldn't be able to public speak like I am to you today. I wouldn't be able to judge livestock, and for Papke to tell me that hog shouldn't have won the class. But, throughout these experiences, I have prepared for my future. Like Papke said, I'm attending Oklahoma State, and I plan to pursue a career in agriculture and to become that future generation of agriculture, because it is so important. And without these two individuals, that wouldn't be possible, because they are growing students and building the future of agriculture as we speak. So there wouldn't be two more deserving people than these two.
You see why there's 180 kids in this program. All right, on behalf of Ben Lapine Schools, our champion of students proudly presents to Jamie Brentano and to Jeff Papke, I'll give it to you in a second. Thank you for your service to students, for developing a thriving FFA program, and for mentoring students as they pursue their goals and dreams. Your commitment to excellence and dedication to student learning makes powerful, positive difference in the lives of students, just like with Olivia. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you both. Thank you. One more round of applause. Come on. Let's get a picture. Let's get a picture. And that's it for recognitions.
Thank you, and thank you both. We will now move on to item number 5, which is public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, and community members as it helps to guide the work of Ben Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one of many avenues available to ensure this connection. Members of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email, as well as in writing. Individual board members may also make themselves available for phone, video, and/or in-person conversations. In terms of public comment for tonight, we did not receive any requests to submit public comment for tonight's meeting. So we will move on to item number 6, consent for action. Consent for action items are routine in nature, and they're placed on the consent for action agenda. Any item placed on the consent for action may be removed at the request of any board member prior to the time a vote is taken. All remaining items of the consent for action are then disposed of in a single motion. Items on the consent for action are for informational purposes only. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent for action items.
I will make a motion to approve those items.
I'll second that motion.
Right, so we have a motion made by Director Tatum and seconded by Vice Chair LeGrand. Are there any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing no requests, we will move to a vote.
I did.
All-
Sorry.
sorry,
It's just
go ahead.
discussion. Or can we ask a question?
If we have a discussion, then we will pull that item from, and then we can discuss it separately.
Okay.
Would you like to move
I
something?
just had a question, but
We can absolutely pull it out, and then we'll discuss it.
okay.
Which one is it regarding?
Personnel recommendations.
Okay, so we will then move item 6B, approval of personnel recommendations, off of the consent for action agenda. It will become an action item, and we will at this time vote only for the approval of the minutes. All right? Okay, then we will take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and that was unanimous. And we will move forward to action items, and our first action item will be approval of the personnel recommendations. I will entertain a motion to approve them and a second, and then we will open it to discussion.
I will make a motion to approve the personnel recommendations.
Second.
Great, so we have a motion to approve the personnel recommendations by Director Tatum and a second by Director Olson. We will now open to discussion.
Sorry, I don't know if this is actually the right place for this question because it's not about a specific line item. I was just wondering, as I was looking at the certified resignations, which always happen this time of year, if you could tell us, I know there's been concern about increasing resignation of teachers and just the workload and how teachers are feeling. And so I was just wondering if we are experiencing a normal number of particularly teacher resignations at this point in the year.
I think the best guess I can give you is I haven't gone through this period in the district before, so I'm not sure what normal means, but I can tell you it seems like it's trending about as expected. One thing I will tell you is this year we've had more cases of people resigning mid-year. There have been a general increase in that, where staff has decided to either take an extended leave of absence or just turned in their resignation without a plan to finish the year. That has been on the uptick to some extent, and I think from my conversations with other superintendents, that's trending that way both in the state and potentially even nationally. But I think as far as the resignations go as an overall, the data would still be early for us to make a decision on that, but it does seem to be holding with typical years. So.
Are there any other questions or discussion? All right, then we will move forward with a vote. All in favor of approving the personnel recommendations?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will now move into action items, and we will start with action item 7A, which is English Language Development Curriculum, and that will be led. That's right. Sorry, excuse me. And we're going to start off with Superintendent Cook on that.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. I think, as you know, this is the season we talk often about curricular adoption. One of the things that I would like to point out is that there's an opportunity for us to align a little differently this year. I'm going to ask Kinsey Martin to come up and talk through if you have any questions, but we'd like to get the English language art development curriculum aligned to the ELA adoption that we will be undergoing next year. And so that is out of sequence for typical, and for that we would need board approval, and we are seeking your feedback on that particular item today. And if you have questions, I'm glad for Kinsey to come up and answer those. If not, we would be glad to have your approval on that. That would allow us to put that adoption off until the 22-23 school year.
Are there questions from the board on that?
I think my only question is, I mean, your rationale certainly makes sense. My question is just that we all know how quickly out of date curriculum, becomes in modern times. And so with the delay, what are you doing in order to make sure that the curriculum that we are using is benefiting from the best we know around science and learning? And
yeah, for sure. What we're using currently is connected to our core language arts programs currently, which we're currently still using. And so we feel like at this point they still very much apply to core content and aren't so significantly off that, it's a... that the year would be wasted, essentially. There's still really quality materials in there. So, as long as we have that connection going, we feel and are able to meet the standards, the ELP standards, which we definitely are still able to do, we feel pretty good about it. Does that help? Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right. Then we will move, I will entertain a motion to approve a one-year postponement of the ELD course curriculum adoption.
I move to approve the one-year postponement of the ELD course curriculum adoption.
And I'll second.
Great. Motion has been made by Director McPherson Douglas, seconded by Director Tatum. Is there any further discussion? Then we will move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll now move into action item 7B, the Student Advisory Group. We are moving into, let me back up. We have been having discussion about really wanting to elevate student voice in our district. We heard a lot from our students during our Equity and Excellence review process 3 years ago. And we are also starting with our 2 iterations of the Youth Truth survey to really be hearing how our students feel that our district is serving them or not serving them, and in what areas. And so we really have wanted to think about how we might elevate student voice further. What this board would like to do, or what has been proposed or asked for by individual members of this board, is to actually develop a committee. And to develop a committee that would be short-term, so it's a temporary committee, it is not a standing committee of the board, but it would be a temporary committee that includes between 1 and 3 board members, and then would include members of the Ben Lapine district staff as well, to really think about what a student advisory group might be, think about what the goals are, think about what the membership would look like, and to move forward with caution as we develop, explore and develop this option. And then that committee would come back with a proposal to our board and to our district leadership to vote on. And so at this time, we will be asking for 1 to 3 board members. And even though we are staying in that range of board members that are serving on a committee so that it is not a quorum of board members, we will still be using public meeting laws. And so we will be noticing these meetings and ensuring that, that all standard pieces of public meeting law apply to the meetings of this committee as well. So I just want to, put that out there and make sure everyone's clear. So the 2 questions really to the board right now are, 1, is our board in favor of putting into place a temporary committee? And we see this committee as running from present through probably January to get this up and running. And then if the answer is yes, then asking if there are 1, 2 or 3 people that would be interested in serving on this committee. So I will open it to discussion.
Personally, I think there's definitely a need for it. I believe the student's voice is critical to us in looking at our strategic plans and the things we want to do in terms of, being inclusive and understanding their voice. Because I think if we get a feel for what's going on in their environments, that give us a better opportunity to not only engage, but just get a feel for how we can tackle some of those things and support not only the students, but the teachers, administration, so forth and so on. So I think it's very, very critical on one piece. And to answer your second question, I would love to be a part of that committee to be able to make sure we can amplify student voice.
Yes, I agree with everything Mark has said. We have said over and over again that we want to hear from our students and the importance of student voice. And, our schools need to be serving the needs of our students. We definitely saw in our youth truth data, we have work to do. So, yes, I absolutely am in favor of this. I can serve on the committee. I can step back. My schedule is probably the most limited of anybody's, so I don't want everyone to have to work around me. I'm willing, but I don't have to.
I spoke to this a couple of meetings ago, so I don't know that I have too much more to add. At an SBA, I attended, I think, 3 different sessions on this because I'm really passionate about it. So excited to see this be established. Happy to help. Also don't have to be on the committee. I can help, on or off the committee. So
I am definitely, in favor of having a group define and set up a purpose and some goals for making this a really important and significant student voice effort. I would like very much to be on that committee to set it up.
Let's start with a vote for, it sounds like we're ready to make a vote on establishing the committee. So I will entertain a motion to establish a student advisory group committee, or a committee on forming a student advisory group.
My only perhaps small edit to that is that I'm not positive that a student advisory group is the answer. I think to me it's more about a committee exploring how to bring student voice to the board. So I'll make a motion to approve a committee or to establish a short-term committee to discuss how to bring student voice to the board.
And I will second that.
Great. All in favor of establishing a committee to explore how to bring student voice to the board?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes. And then we don't need to vote on committee members because we are missing one board member tonight. I think I'd like to be able to circle back on that for us to be able to determine who the right committee members are. But I have taken note of everybody who is interested. Okay.
And just to clarify, we don't need to bring that to another board meeting to a vote. You can just talk to
No.
everyone and we can
Yeah,
figure it out.
we do
offline.
not need to vote.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll now move into agenda item number 8, which is our reports. And our first report will be on our English language arts adoption. And we will be hearing from Julie Walker, Elementary Director of Curriculum Instruction and Systems.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. I would just add that this is the place in the agenda that we had some modifications Monday morning to the board book. So if you were in there prior to, you're going to notice that first off there was some deletions and some date modifications. And I think Julie's going to speak to those things, but I just wanted to point that out so there wasn't any concern if you happen to be looking at that prior to Monday morning. Julie.
All right, well, I am so excited to be back with you again tonight. It's been a few weeks, and this has been it's been an all year long process. And so I'll talk through a little bit for the people that were not here last time and the people listening in. a little bit about our process that we've been through, and then I will bring forth our recommendation for our next steps. So our committee was formed back in October, and it had 30 educators, or it has 30 educators in all different positions. So classroom teachers of grades K through 5, specialists, learning specialists, English language proficiency specialists, reading specialists, interventionists, instructional coaches, 2 of which are here tonight, Anna Schmidt and Kaylin Adams. They're cheering us on as we go through this process. And they've been along the way for 7 months of this work, so a huge amount of work. And as part of the beginning part, speaking of student voice, at the very beginning of this committee, we conducted listening sessions with students. We did interviews with students about their experience in the Ben Lapine schools learning how to read. We talked to families, we talked to educators across the district, and we brought that feedback back to our team, and we really looked at it and took it to heart and formed our core beliefs based on that feedback. And then our next step was to take all that feedback and form the core beliefs, and then go back out and get feedback again, and then finalize the core beliefs, and then create a rubric along with Oregon Department of Education's rubric that we align with. And then from there, we had 11 different programs that we were looking at, and we used a rubric to identify the strengths and challenges of each of those curriculums and narrowed it down to 4. And then we went into field testing of those 4 curriculums, where our committee was field testing lessons from all of the 4 programs. And along the way, we had physical materials in 5 of our sites. We had digital resources available. We had community opportunities for viewing. We had staff opportunities for viewing, and collected all that feedback, brought it back to the team just last week, and we were able to come to consensus with our team, and we were at almost 100% consensus on our choice and our recommendation for what we would like to move forward with or recommend. And so just to give you that update, we are recommending that in grades K through 5, for foundational literacy skills, we use a program called Really Great Reading. And Really Great Reading encompasses some different programs within it. So in kindergarten, that would be a program called Countdown. In first and some second, it would be a program called Blast. And then in 3rd grade, it would be a program called HD Word. And 4th and 5th grade will be HD Word Plus. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the why of why this program over the other 3. So really, one of the big things that the board asked me last time I was here was that alignment piece. Like, do you want to align across classrooms K-5? And our committee really thought a lot about that, and they said, yes, we would like to align with the program that we are using in all K through 5 classrooms in order to really create the instructional routines being the same, and also just the systems and the scope and sequence being the same and common throughout all of our classrooms, grades K through 5. So that was one of our big reasons. And then another one of the big reasons to have a K-5 common program across all of our schools is professional learning. It allows for our coaches and for our strategic team to really become familiar with that program and provide really quality professional learning. So, and the other reason, or one of the other reasons we chose Really Great Reading, is it's very systematic. It has a common scope and sequence that builds upon each other throughout the year for each grade level, and also throughout the years as kids go from K to 5. So then in addition to that piece, it's explicit. So that means that it's I do, we do, you do, and sometimes it's I do, we do, we do, we do, you do, you do. And that just means that it provides a lot of direct instruction, a lot of guided practice, and a lot of independent practice for students. which is what our students are needing. In addition to that, it's multisensory, and what our committee learned about the science of reading is that the multisensory piece is key. And what that means is that you're using your senses simultaneously. It's very important for our readers when they're learning how to read to be able to hear something and say it and also write it at the same time. Those senses need to interact. Or to be saying something and moving something at the same time. And that's how our brain learns. So that was very important to our committee that we had that in place, or that the program that we recommend has that in place. The other piece about really great reading that other programs are not doing yet is built-in professional learning. So there's a lot of online support that's built right into the lessons that are being delivered in the classroom that are really professional learning for the teacher. It's teaching teachers how to teach reading alongside teaching the students how to read. So that was a big positive of this program. In addition to that piece, this program provides webinars and science of reading trainings and just a plethora of support to help us with our professional learning. And it's engaging for kids. So in all of our grades, the program comes with, I'm gonna back up just a second so you can kind of visually see. Kind of hard to see, but in the picture there you can see the program comes with these boards. And this is where kids are, the multisensory piece comes into play. Kids are moving letters and sounds and word parts. They're breaking down multisyllabic words. Which is great for them. And then in addition to that, it comes with a thing called Reading Playgrounds, which is an online system where every 5 lessons, kids play some games and it assesses them. And then that information goes back to the teacher and lets the teacher know if the students learned it or not. So teachers are able to put together small groups and reteach when needed. Uh-oh. Nope. Okay. So just our next steps. So from tomorrow through the 19th of May, we have opportunities for community feedback and staff feedback, and those will be available here at the Education Center. We have a room set up with the materials, and then also at Roslyn Elementary, and then we'll have digital access as well. We have a press release, both in English and Spanish, that will be released tomorrow, and information that will go out to the schools with a sign up for those opportunities. And then when we come back to you on the 24th, we'll be seeking board approval for our recommendation. So thank you for the time to talk with you about this process.
Julie, could I just add one thing, that we do have a way that the board members will be able to see that feedback in the board packet, I believe.
On the 24th.
Before the 24th.
Okay, yes, thank you. Any questions for me?
Yeah, just one. First of all, your process is so incredibly thorough and inclusive. Thank you. It sounds amazing. I'm actually just going to read a question from one of our parents that has been advocating for kids with dyslexia, because I can't ask it any better myself. She asks, what books and materials is Bindle Pine Public Schools going to send home for kids to practice their foundational reading skills? Will new decodable books be included in this adoption? The reason I ask is because sending home leveled books defeats the purpose of the foundational reading focus. Kids need to practice the specific skills they're learning. If teachers continue to send home leveled books, kids will continue to guess at words they don't know, which can impede progress and learning for many students.
Right. So one of the things about this program that is very distinct from other programs that we've had in the past is it provides decodable readers that are not what you would typically see. So typically in reading programs of the past, you'll see very colorful, predictable books. This program really provides a decodable passage based on what kids have already learned that don't have a lot of pictures and stimulus to look at, because the whole purpose of this program is to not encourage guessing. And so we will have those materials and provide those materials to families as well as we are learning.
Julie, I have a question. Implementation plans. Typically, you can go K-5 BAM with every grade level. Sometimes it's better to implement 2 or 3 grade levels at a time. I'm sure you've talked about that. Can you share that thinking with us?
Yes, we are meeting with the committee again on Thursday to fully put into place the professional learning plan. But as of now, we have, many opportunities this summer for classroom teachers and interventionists and specialists to participate in professional learning. So we have some one-day trainings that will be happening. And then in addition to that, we have some deeper 2-day trainings that will take place during our Jumpstart program this summer, so teachers can actually practice in classrooms. And then in terms of next year and ongoing professional learning, we have a plan to really focus with our instructional coaches on labs in the classroom where we are practicing implementation throughout the year.
Thank you. That was part of my question. I probably didn't make it so clear. I really was talking about implementing for the kids a grade level at a time or 2 grade levels at a time. Example, to do the K1 or the K program and the next year then start immediately with the 1st grade and 2nd grade. That was more like I was thinking. So thanks for explaining the professional development, though. That's very important.
Yes, and in terms of, we are going to do a K-5 adoption this year. We have our language arts adoption that is coming next year as well, and so we're going to do the K-5 next year implementation, and then just continue to build on that in future years.
When you talk about that this will be implemented at all schools, are you talking about the magnet schools as well?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Julie. Carrie said it best, the amount of process that has gone and deep thought and just is wonderful. It's remarkable. And just a huge shout out to all of the people that joined in this committee work over the course of this year to get us to this point of having a recommendation. And then to the public, please take the opportunity to view these resources, provide feedback if you would like to, and we look forward to reading your feedback before we vote on the adoption on the 24th. Next, we will move into item 8B, which is our strategic priorities update, and this is the focus of this one is on instructional practices, and we are going to hear from Kinsey Martin, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
I appreciate these directions. Start with number 1, turn on the microphone. All right, thank you so much for having us. We have a team that you'll get to hear from in just a moment. I just want to set them up before they share with you. What we are going to share with you tonight is actually a we know that a lot of your work as a board is at the 10,000 foot level in our organization, and we were thinking that one of the best ways to highlight the progress on some of our instructional practices and strategic priorities is to zoom really far deep into the work and give you a really specific example of some of the pieces that that we have teams working on. So we're gonna zoom into some specific student lessons. One of the things that we won't do, though, in zooming in pretty specifically to a particular project is we won't have the opportunity to talk about our different initiatives as a whole or give a lot of context for our lead cohort leadership. We've shared before with you all, I think maybe a year ago at this time, some updates about our lead cohort, things they were working on and their leadership. But we won't really get into that tonight, like their work as a whole group. looking back or looking ahead at some adjustments to that team. We also won't have the opportunity tonight to really dig into our bias incident work as a whole, again, knowing that that's its own whole conversation that could take, and rightly so, a lot of conversation. So if you're interested in more details on those, we provided some information in your board packet as far as our bias incident work, in particular since 2019 up till this point, and then looking forward at some next steps that we are planning. So I just wanted to sort of start this by saying what you won't get is a broad look at either of those pieces. What you are going to get, though, is to see a really important project coming out of the overlap of those two different initiatives. And we really, another reason for really zooming in to focus on a particular project at this pretty concrete level is to share really transparently how we're approaching this work as well, not just that we're doing it, that there's people working on it, but some examples of what it looks like and sounds like for you all, for our community. It's important for us that we're very transparent. This is a lot of innovation and design work that we're chewing through and really seeking voices of our community in the whole process. And so we want to get to share with you what that looks like with a specific project. So tonight we're going to share with you about some student lessons that we have been piloting or sort of field testing in some of our schools. We've noticed as we've done a lot of work on the bias incident systems and developing infrastructure for that work, we've noticed that we really need a way for our students to set our students up for success. We don't want anyone to feel surprised in our work or in our expectations, and that goes for families, students, teachers, and we also really want to share some language about what we're talking about and what we're not talking about. I think one of the things I continually learn is sometimes in what appears to be a disagreement or a difference of values is really just a difference of terminology, and once you can sit and sort of get your language on the same page, there's usually a lot more opportunity for connection and mutual understanding. So we wanted to do that with our students as well as a really key group. And then we also want to give them the chance to practice the skills that we're asking of them. So if we are expecting certain things and we are defining what those are, we also want to make sure that they have the skills to implement and uphold the expectations that we have as a system. So we have developed some student lessons around bias and bias incidents, really looking at what is bias? What do we mean when we say that word? Why is it important to talk about? Who experiences it, and how do different people experience it in different contexts? How do we identify it and interrupt it when it happens? It happens to all of us at different points. And so how do we stop it when we see it? And then how do we report it is a really important piece that we've been working on with students. So we have lessons from kindergarten through high school, trying really hard to make them developmentally appropriate and standards-based so that we're not designing, something just out of nowhere, that this is connected to what we know about child development and the learning standards that we're required to be covering. And we, tonight, the teachers that are here are going to share at some different levels, kindergarten, upper elementary, secondary, what those lessons are sounding like and looking like. And then aside from just the content of what those lessons actually entail, we also, you'll hopefully hear a little bit of the process, the piloting process that goes into this. By no means do we want to develop a lesson and then just implement it in a classroom and that's that. We really want to hear from families. We want to know how it's landing at home. What are families hearing when their kid comes home? We want families to have a heads up so they can talk about this topic with their family as a family before the school talks about it. That's important. To us as parents, that we have the chance to connect with our own students and children about their learning before and after. And so you will hear from some of these teacher leaders tonight how we're soliciting that feedback. Just for a little context, we are connecting with groups of students through either clubs or affinity groups to ask students about, what do you think about this lesson? How is that going to feel, not only the content of the lesson, but also So the delivery, what's it going to be like to be you sitting in this classroom with your peers, with this teacher, getting this lesson and getting feedback from them. We've reached out to individual students to get feedback. We have asked that families give us feedback. We shared before students are getting the lesson, families are getting a letter saying here's all of the content of the lesson. Please talk with your child about it before and after. Please share any feedback. It's going to help us refine and improve the lessons. And then our lead cohort teacher leaders, who you'll hear from, are the ones really piloting this in their classrooms, K-12, giving feedback and collecting, and their own professional feedback too on, as a teacher, this part of the lesson did not feel, I didn't have enough support, or this part was really uncomfortable for me to cover without some partnership, or we didn't scaffold enough for language learners in this section. So we're hoping to get feedback from all of those partners. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. I don't know, we'll just go in this order. I'll let each of them introduce themselves. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. And then we'll do questions at the very end, if that's okay. So, all right.
Good evening. I'm Brian Gonzalez. I teach 5th grade at Bear Creek Elementary in the DI program under Lisa Burke and Kenzie Martin. Like she said, I'm part of the lead cohort, and before we approach this lesson, I send out the letter home first a week in advance to parents via letter, paper letter, and via email in both languages to all parents, telling them that I was going to be teaching this lesson on a Friday. So they were aware, and in case any of the parents had any concerns or any questions, they had plenty of time in advance to contact me and let me know before I taught the lesson. And then I sent a reminder on Wednesday before the Friday lesson. And then when Friday came, I approached it with the students just creating a safe environment first, making sure that every student in my class knew that we were going to be doing the lesson, and that if at any point within the time of the lesson, they had any feeling of uncomfortableness or anything like that, they know that they can raise their hand and let me know or something like that. So I approached it with the sense of like building a strong or having a strong community in place before the lesson. Like Ms. Martin said, we are the lead cohort and we are piloting this lesson, so it's not by all means perfect. There's plenty of time for us to redefine it and perfect it before we, pass it on to everybody in the school district. But yeah, some of the feedback I got from parents afterwards. One parent in particular said that they were glad that their daughter was part of this program, and anything in the future that they can help with, to let them know. Another parent, a Spanish-speaking parent, asked me to translate the slides in Spanish because she wanted to share them with other family members. And then a student in particular, who I have his letter here, because I asked him after the lesson was done, I asked the kids some self-reflection about what they thought about the lesson, what they liked, what they didn't like, and it was anonymous, like I didn't have them write their name on it. And one student in particular told me that, or wrote down that he was glad that I gave him the lesson because he's experienced things like this before, and up until that point of the lesson, he didn't know that it was called bias, or that it was called stereotyping, or that it was called those terms that I used. And he's like, now that I know, I can say something for next time, or be aware that it's happening, because even as an 11-year-old, as a 5th grade student, he already knew what those things were. He just didn't know the term for what was happening. So then, overall, all the feedback that I got from parents, from my principal, from the kids themselves was positive, and I was able to connect with them even further. As a person of color myself, I was able to relate some of my own experiences as well, growing up in Oregon, in Bend, because I'm from Bend, I grew up here. So I was able to relate my own experiences to embed them in the lesson as well. So for me, it was a very positive experience. So that's my take. Excuse
me. Hi, my name's Erica Hoynes. I teach kindergarten at High Lakes. And I followed the same process. I included, I sent a letter home to my families about the lesson I was going to teach. And then I included the whole lesson, also a link, so my families could read the lesson ahead of time, and knew we were going to talk about identity and bias. And for my kindergarten class, I really broke this lesson down into 2 parts. The first part was really learning about what identity meant, what that is. And then the second part was learning what to do if they heard unkind comments about themselves or about somebody else's identity. I think it's really important that this learning is developmentally appropriate and meaningful for our youngest kids. So because of that, we talked a lot about the things that are most important in each of our lives and the things that make us who we are. And we identified these things as part of our identities. My students really enjoyed doing that. They thought that was really powerful and fun for them. Some of the things that they came up with that they labeled as their identities were their families, their hair color, their styles of their hair, their skin colors, their abilities, their pets, and the things that they really love to do. The bias part of the lesson for my youngest students was communicating what to do if there's an unkind comment to you or if somebody's left out because of their identity. We brainstormed some trusted grown-ups that we could go and talk to if we needed help with this. And my students were highly engaged during this lesson. These lessons, it really took 2 lessons to get through this. And they especially enjoyed learning about the word identity and talking and sharing about what makes people different from each other and what makes them special. And I think this is the most valuable piece of this learning experience for our youngest kids, is talking about their identities and what makes them special and how to value those pieces of them. I got some feedback from parents. One parent said, "I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate the lesson around bias. I'm going to talk to my child about it tonight. Thank you." Another one said, "I think this is so wonderful that you've taught this lesson and that the school's on board with it." Another parent said, "Bias can be a hard concept to grasp, even for adults. I'm grateful for the lesson. It has planted a seed in him to begin to understand bias, and I hope it will help him to acknowledge and work through biases as he grows older." And another parent said, "I'm very pleased as a parent that this seemingly basic idea is being addressed intentionally and in an age-appropriate way. We're glad that as a young age, she is being taught that everyone should be treated well and that we need to use our voice to advocate for others. We listened to the story at home and it lent itself to a good chat." I think moving forward, I'd like to continue to, I think that we need to continue to look at this topic in the lessons to make sure that it's developmentally appropriate for kindergarten and 1st grade, and how we can make sure they grasp it and understand it in a way that works best for them. And I think offering to support and work with other teachers to show them how they can do this with their students in a way that's makes them feel good. Thanks.
Hi, thank you for listening to us today. My name's Amy Zepniewski, and I'm a teacher at Pacific Crest Middle School. So I had 2 different installments of this lesson. When Kizzy brought it to me, I'm really excited. Things have been happening in our middle school this year that have been really tough. And I know I'm part of an affinity group for students of color at our school that we started this year. And so that was my first audience. I wanted the students to see the whole teacher lesson preparation for this. So we brought this to our students, and we went through the process together so that the students would see the teacher work as well as how it's going to be received by students. The feedback was really good. The kids were really excited in our affinity group. They're like, "Yes, we need this." And the part that Erica's talking about, the developmental piece, is super important in middle school and high school too, because it's a little bit different. Kids are embarrassed and they do not want to be on the spotlight. So going into the lesson with my students, some of the students in our affinity group mentioned they wouldn't feel comfortable if this were presented in advisory lesson, because they are like the only minority student in their classroom. So that is really important to think about when we present these to our schools. You know, different schools have different demographics, so having an opportunity or a space where students who don't feel comfortable being the only minority in the classroom is extremely important for our students to think about. It's really good as far as interaction. So I shared this lesson with my 6th grade class, and I've only been with this group for 3 weeks. However, I thought about which group I wanted to share this with first, and I feel like these 6th graders, we've really felt like a really good connection with the students. I share, every time I start the wheel, which is our language wheel, I share about myself and my experiences in a biracial family and growing up, and kind of where that leads me as a teacher of Japanese language. And so some of the things that I've experienced. And so we kind of set the stage, and I had just done this with the students. I had also shared some stories, and students also share their story. So they have a space where they're sharing their stories too. So I thought this would be a really great opportunity to share this lesson with them. I did the same thing. First I emailed our principal to make sure this is okay to do, because we weren't quite sure which schools we were gonna pilot it at. And everything, I sent the emails out. I did receive 2 emails from parents. They were on board, super excited, happy this was gonna happen, but at the same time would say, it's kind of about time. You know, I hope this continues on. What's the next step? They're ready for the next step. And these are students, parents of students of color. So I presented this, and I think it was great to hear Erica talk about how the kids enjoyed the identity part. I think that's something we need to start at a young age and work with our students, because that was one of the parts that was the most difficult for my students. They had a really hard time coming up with who they are, what makes them them. Some of the other things that they shared too, besides their likes and their abilities, was also their religion. And so I thought that was amazing that this group of students felt, comfortable and safe, that they could talk about that's part of their identity. So we shared that, and then the lesson went really well. My 4th period class, my principal and a counselor came and observed as well. So I wanted feedback from as many people as I could get. I did also record it, and we don't have that, because I don't know if I'm going to share that one yet. It's kind of hard to watch yourself teach. So again, the delivery lesson went very well. I think one of the most important things, the role play. The role play was really difficult, and I expressed how difficult it is for adults to do this, especially for adults of color, to be role playing a situation. And it was kind of hard for the kids to take the role play as well, because they didn't want to be mean. So that's heartwarming, the role play part. But it's more of, what are the steps? When you hear this, what do you do? And then giving them tools. So that is extremely important, providing our students with tools. One student said, "Now I know." So that was pretty awesome. Sorry. I think that's really important, that opening our students' eyes. If they don't know, they don't know. And it was just amazing to watch kids ask these questions that I know that's inside of them and they're afraid to ask. But if they have a space that they can ask these questions, it empowers them. And it helps all of our students, not just our students of color, but all of our students, to understand that. Sorry, I'm really passionate about this. I think it's going to be hard. Next steps for teachers. Thank you. For teachers, and we're here, lead cohort members are here to help co-teach, to design, and maybe video ourselves so that other teachers feel confident when they go into their lesson. I also did break this into two segments so that initial segment was teaching, and then the second segment was what do we do, what are our next steps, and how do we stop, speak up, and report. And then I asked students to share this with their families, to go home and talk about it. They had a worksheet. I had them bring that home. And the feedback from students was great. They were super excited to say, I shared this with my family, and these are the people that I can come to and talk to if I need help. So, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
I can't remember if I think I forgot to mention, in addition to our lead cohort teachers piloting this in their classrooms, we also have one school-wide pilot happening, so that we can get a sense of, if we're asking an entire school community to implement the lesson, what does that look like and feel like on a more collective level. So we have a school doing that this week, and I've gotten the chance to be in a couple classrooms observing, and I'll get to co-teach it with a teacher Thursday as well. And like you heard from these teacher leaders, they are not perfect yet. By no means do we have lessons that we feel really solid as far as structure, content, all of those pieces. But hopefully you got to hear a little also of the design process and the feedback loops that are happening to make sure that this feels effective and supportive, and that our community knows that this is not just something we're doing in the classroom. This is a community collective effort. We're asking parents and families to be involved and to give us feedback this spring too. So yeah, if you have any questions for any of us, we're happy to answer.
Thank you, Kinsey and teachers, for all your work in this. I'm just really, really grateful for the time that has gone into this. And I just can't imagine as teachers what it's like to commit that kind of effort and then now be at the point of implementing some of these lessons. I feel kind of like that one parent who was asking, like, what's next? It's about time. And just really eager to see this unfold. What are the next steps? Do you have an idea, or is this just at the stage of let's just see how these lessons go?
Yeah, I can speak to that, and then please jump in if you want to add anything. So in your board packet, there's a link to a document that goes over steps that have gotten us to this point and some next steps. I'm not sure, though, that it... So that might have some context, I guess, but I'm not sure it answers your question as far as next steps with the lesson. We are going to, within the next couple weeks, as lead cohort teacher leaders and our school-wide pilot wrap up their implementation, we're going to collect all that feedback, again, from families, from students, from teachers, from administrators, and look at it, refine the lessons, which might take, over the summer to really sit down and dig in. And, right now we have some, at the kindergarten, first grade level of the lesson, there's some Sesame Street videos that we are using for the content, and at upper grades there's different videos. So, we might need some time to investigate different video resources, adjust the handouts, the presentation. The graphics are not the best currently on the slide, so just sort of updating some of that. And then what we're hoping to do is, you heard a couple of them videotaped, and some other of our lead cohort members are videoing as well. So we also are hoping to develop some sample video. If a teacher is sort of, before I am asked to teach this, I want to see it and hear it and know how to anticipate, we will have more of those types of resources. We're exploring as well the possibility of a more guided structure of, for a teacher who is uncomfortable, do we have some parts that are pre-recorded as far as the teaching and or co-teaching with some of our teacher leaders next fall, and then hoping to be able to implement this lesson in all of our classrooms, kindergarten through 12th grade, in the fall. Just to, it's one lesson, it's not enough, it's pretty late as far as we know the experiences our students are having, but hopefully a step that we can, again, for consistency and shared language, roll that out in the fall with a more refined version. So anything you would add to that?
I was just gonna say that having these type of lessons being taught, especially at, for example, I can only speak to Bear Creek, which is one of the most diverse schools in the school district, where half of my students are students of color themselves. Having them be taught this lesson, I found it very helpful for them because, like one of my students said, I had already experienced things like the things that you were talking about. I had already experienced them as a 10-year-old. I just didn't know that that's what they were called or what to do when it's happening. But now I know. So if that was the case with 5th grade students, can't imagine with high-des or middle school students or even high students. So when she came to me about teaching this lesson, I was like, yes, what do I do to be able to, make it for 5th graders and teach it to them? So I was all for it.
I love that, sorry, I have like 2 more questions. Okay, so I'm just gonna go for it. I love that you're utilizing the lead cohort to teach these lessons, but like, especially at the kindergarten level around identity, they sound a lot like kind of SEL lessons. Is there integration with like the, oh gosh, what's the title of the, is it the student success coordinator or is it the counselor that teaches some of those lessons, or the SEL teacher at the schools?
Yeah, that's a good, just sort of what other roles are going to be involved. In our school-wide pilot, one of the things that we are talking about is how to utilize the counseling team a little more explicitly, or maybe a core team from each school who wants to really dig in and practice together and then be available to colleagues in their school. So, lead cohort members are often 1 or 2 members per school, maybe adding counselors, maybe adding some of those other specialist roles to support, or other people who bring different, perspectives and lived experiences in the building, whoever they are, and working through that together. So certainly this won't live, and to that original Venn diagram, this won't live with lead cohort forever. They're sort of just leading the pilot of this process right now too, and certainly ongoing we'll be able to help define or refine and develop on an ongoing basis. But yes, those other roles will be key for sure.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And my last question is just about resourcing and making sure that we're supporting the lead cohort, ensuring that they have not just the resources, but the compensation. They're being valued for their time. They're being given the space within their day to actually dedicate to this work. So that's one piece, like I want to know more about that. But then the second piece is there going to be an expansion of support, especially as kind of I hear your plans for rolling out these lessons? Is there going to be an identified person to kind of oversee this work? Is that robust enough? Like, I'm just very curious about, not just curious, but concerned about whether we're providing the adequate support to making sure that this is sustainable and we're not, because this is obviously, as you know, like very heavy work, especially for those who have gone through these experiences as well, and it's deeply personal and painful to have to relive these experiences as they're being taught and then walking their students through it.
Yes, absolutely. We are in the process right now of interviewing and hiring lead cohort teachers on special assignment, so more of an instructional coach role for traditionally we've had the lead cohort for almost 2 years now, so traditionally might be a stretch, but currently we have this group of 20-25 teachers who represent all of our schools and different levels, and they are all current full-time classroom teachers who are time-sheeted, compensated for their time to develop this work and do these leadership activities. But it is after hours, evenings, their own personal time that they're dedicating, compensation aside. And so this coming year we will have some partial release TOSA positions. So we won't have like one instructional coach whose job this is entirely. And part of that was intentional that, when it lives with one single person, if that person was a kindergarten teacher, then high school teachers are like, you're not going to know my context. And, as we do new curriculum adoptions and go through these, growth and development in other areas of our organization, we need these lead cohort members to be deeply involved and understand the classroom experience. I don't know, that keeping it rooted in the classroom so that they are teacher leaders that are bringing that teacher lens very specifically to this work is important. So they will all be partial release positions. The other piece was to have more than one person for that sense of community, to your point about just safety and heavy work, that we don't want to put this on one coach, entirely. So more on that very soon, probably maybe 2 weeks. I think we'll know those folks. And then we do intend to keep some broader timesheet, project-based structures to develop leadership on an ongoing basis of our other, classroom teachers in the system. But those coaches will help us look at what does that look like moving forward. So does that answer your question?
It does. I would also, probably not while you're being filmed and in front of everybody, but I would definitely love to hear, what is your feedback as teachers going through this experience? Are are the opportunities, the timesheet opportunities big enough? Are those, partial release TOSA sounds very partial. So do you mean are these robust enough supports to making we ensure that you're successful in your work?
Thank you. That's helpful.
All right, first, thank you for the work. You guys know how I feel about this kind of work. Quick question, I'm just gonna make it quick. Any blind spots from the teachers that you didn't see coming as teachers doing this work? And number two, do you have any trepidations or for support to be able to do this work from not just from your school buildings, but from the community at large? So that's what I want to know. Those are my questions.
Well, I think inherently, whenever we touch subjects like this, you kind of get, at least speaking for just myself, when I'm passionate about this, which is why I joined Kinsey and the lead cohort stuff. But with anything, especially in the times that we are in right now, whenever we approach something like bias, incident bias, how to be aware of them, how to respond to them, and letting parents know, you always have the tingle in the back of your neck, oh, am I taking the right steps, or am I gonna ruffle feathers? Am I gonna do things, or am I gonna have parents emailing my principal, with not so kind comments? But what I did when deciding how to approach this subject was with the positive, I outweigh the negatives. Would my students gain more from me doing it, going forward with it, than letting them just, go through life or through the rest of their fifth grade not knowing how the signs of a bias incident or how unkind comments look like, or how to being separated from other kids based on how you look like. So that's the process that I went through, and I decided I'm just gonna go for it and be as give parents as much time as they need to decide if they want to say something or not. And if I don't hear from them, then I'm gonna just assume the best, that they do want their kid as part of this lesson. And when I was doing the lesson, like I said at the beginning, I made sure that every one of my students knew that if at any point whatsoever they felt uncomfortable or weirded out or something, that they and their classmates were going to be respectful, and that they knew that they could just speak up. And, we would, I would do my best to accommodate that. But like I said, there's always that sense of, am I going to get any type of pushback? Of, especially as a teacher and as a community member, as just a person. So, yeah. So
I also think the process has been really great. We have a letter for families, and before I did this, I sent the email home to all my families so that they could read it, prepare for ahead of time. So I think that process is really important. If they have families have opportunities to read and go through this before, they also have an option to opt out. So I think with any of this work, it's always hard, it's difficult, and you're always going to find the teachers that are going to do this regardless of pay. It's going to happen because it's a need that's a need in our schools. And so think we're always happy to step up and speak up for our students. It's important that we do because no one else is going to do the work. And so, Shimiko, just to get back to your question, yeah, support for teachers. This board has been an amazing support for teachers. I felt it, and I appreciate that. I also do outside of our school activities for our students, and I'm in parts of groups that have helped. So community support has been amazing for me personally to help do the work. But when you teach your students and you see them and you see the need, it's not hard to step in and be a voice for our students who need us. So, thank you.
I guess the last thing I want to say, I don't want to like monopolize the time myself. I am a talker, so if you guys can stop me at any time. But to answer your question, I was just brainstorming back here about if we have enough resources or enough materials to like tackle this subject. And the simple answer is no. There's never going to be enough resources to be able to tackle a big subject like the ones we are trying to inform. There's never going to be enough people, enough resources, enough money, enough anything to go around. The best we can do with what we have is do the best with what we have. We have the lead cohort that we are taking, steps towards mitigating this and tackling subjects and instructing kids in a safe environment. And little by little, whether it's with the TOSA teacher at large or with the lead cohort, including more members, that's the best not the best, but it's just, I guess, what I'm trying to say is like small steps in the right direction type thing. Because simple answer is there's never going to be enough resources or enough people to be able to change views or change outcomes or change just visibility and inclusivity in every single one of our Bella Pine schools. The best we can do is, make the most with what we have, I guess. And that's all I'm going to say.
That makes me think of one of our student groups. One of their comments of feedback was sort of, I'm not sure this is going to change our whole school culture. We were like, oh, it's definitely not going to change your entire school culture after a 30-minute lesson. It's a step. It is our next step, and it's the step we're taking right now, but it is one of a long journey for sure. And the other piece that I'm excited about is I'm meeting tomorrow, I think, with the cross-cultural club at Bend High to explore what does it look like to have high school students co-teaching some of this with our teachers, so that at least at the high school level, any one teacher, any one individual can't bring all the perspective or experience needed to address this issue from all angles. And so wrapping our students in to the extent that they want to be involved in leading or facilitating some of that in classrooms is an exciting. That's just a barely an idea that we've been talking about, but I'm excited about that. So.
I just want to quickly appreciate this work. Kenzie, thank you. If people haven't looked, the bias incident process development document that just shows how much work has gone into this systematically, starting with policies and then coming to actually getting instructional practices into our classrooms. I encourage people to read that. Thank you to the members of the LEAD cohort, both for joining and being part of LEAD and really putting your heart and soul into this work. And I want to say thank you, Erica. I always say never underestimate our littlest learners, because there is a developmentally appropriate way to give kids language. And I heard that from Brian and Amy as well. And then when they have that language, and we're talking about kids' identity, and they have the language to name things, that language, I challenge anyone or any school to look at their core values and not find a place where this dovetails right into the core values of any school community. But we're giving kids language to explain either what they're seeing, what they're doing perhaps, or what they're experiencing. And so I just really appreciate your work in this. Thank you.
Melissa, just one other quick comment. I just also wanted to know, in addition to the really important work and topics, you are also just modeling the best we could ever ask for as far as piloting and testing and bringing students into the conversation and teachers and parents. Like if every lesson went through the process that you've gone through, it would be exceptional. So also just want to name that you're doing a really incredible job of feedback and observation and student voice inclusion and all of those aspects as well as the topic. So thank you.
I don't think there are any other questions. Thank you so much. We will now move into 8C, which is the chair report, board chair report. And tonight, I do not have a report. There are no temporal items that I need to bring to this board meeting to share with my fellow board members. But I have asked Director McPherson Douglas to share a report from the High Desert Education Service District Budget Committee meeting that she attended so that we can, as fellow board members, ask her questions in a public meeting regarding that process. So I will hand it over to Director McPherson Douglas.
I will do my best. This was my first HDESD Budget Committee meeting, so learning a lot, and I'm quite certain that Dr. Cook and especially Brad are probably better equipped to answer more of your questions, but I will do the best that I can. For anyone who doesn't know, just briefly, the High Desert Education Service District is a publicly funded agency that partners with local school districts to provide high-quality, cost-effective, and locally responsive educational services at a regional level. One thing that I really noted as they were describing the wide range of services that they provide, which it's like 15 pages of different services from alternative learning options, assistive technology, eternity services, Better Together, early intervention, culture of care, the list goes on and on, was that they serve students birth to career. And so as we talk about what ages should public education serve, I thought it was interesting that we do already have a public agency who explicitly serves kids from birth through career. We heard from our former superintendent, now Dr. Shay Mickelson. He gave a comprehensive update on the Student Success Act, which is a big part of the HDESD support of our districts. I was particularly excited to hear that the state of Oregon has aligned what used to be 6 different departments and initiatives into one, which it sounds like will make planning and reporting significantly more streamlined. So that was a great update. The total revenue for the HDESD, I had no idea, it's $72 million. And it was actually up 7% more this year than the previous year, which was mostly due to one-time funding from ESSER and other federal forces or federal sources. They are seeing that due to decreasing enrollment, just like we are, that they're anticipating a decrease in the state school fund support. And Dr. Cook and I were noting that because Ben Lapine is the largest district, we're a big part of that decrease. Their highest part of their revenue from services to school districts are substitutes. 82% of their revenue is received in that category. I was pleased to find out that that is a cost revenue neutral service, so they don't charge us any more than it takes them to provide that service. They talked a bit, as I said, about the influx of federal stimulus dollars, but also the impact of staffing and inflation and the pandemic, the Great Resignation, supply chain disruptions, et cetera. They are going to be using some SSA funds to hire a new executive director for equity, diversity, and inclusion this year, as well as a new regional director for school improvement, as we all know. And yeah, I mean, we went deep into their budget, and as I said, I'm happy to try to answer questions, but reinforced how many different services they provide that we certainly could never begin to provide to our students. We also had the opportunity to hear from someone that works in the adaptive technology part of the work that the HESD does, and he brought in assisted technology. He brought in some devices that they had built to help students with, in this case, some physical needs, be able to participate fully in class. And they have kind of a one-of-a-kind in the nation lending library of assistive technology that they build many times, and then when a student is done with it, it goes back into the library. So things that our district just would never be able to accomplish, they are able to provide for us.
And Carrie, really quick, just to let you know, they already hired the DEI person.
That's what I was.
Are there questions for Carrie? I know that there were some requests of how to ask questions of her. Okay, if we have no questions, then my report is over, and we will move on to the superintendent's report, item 8D.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. I have 4 things I want to highlight tonight. The first one is we're just coming off of Teacher Appreciation Week last week, and it was such a joy and celebration to be in schools every day last week. And I'm so grateful for our staff and our team that were able to go out and participate and sub and have lunch with and just provide support and resources for our teachers. I can tell you that it was greatly appreciated. It was awesome to be a part of, and I think it's been a tough year for our staff, but it's also been that much more special to be able to celebrate them. And when we do that, it is noted. So thank you all for those of you that were able to be a part of that. The second thing I want to share about, I think that is really important. If you do not know, we have reached an agreement to increase bus driver pay about 25%. That's now starting at about $25 an hour. Actually, that'll be the starting pay next year, July 1, when this year's changes kick in. And so we are now doing weekly driver application opportunities. So every Thursday, if someone's interested in potentially driving for us, they can come fill out an application and take the bus around the lot and learn right there on the spot what it's like to consider driving a bus. We will pay candidates that go through the process and get background checked to be trained. It's about a 6 to 6 week period during that time, and we're glad to have that opportunity. There's so many decisions that are potentially impacted by the need for more drivers, and so we're taking that pretty head on right now, and I can tell you that team is hard at it to try to, and first and maybe I shouldn't say foremost, but definitely one of the priorities would be to get to the possibility of having, rather than 3 start times next year, having 2 start times. And then the second thing would be to free up the opportunity to have field trips and potentially even, I dare say this, but having buses available for extracurricular activities after school. And so I just put a lot of pressure on our team by saying all those things. But I'm very, very hopeful that we can draw folks into those jobs. And we did actually get 4 or 5 last Thursday. And so we're just going to continue, and hopefully we can get some more. The third thing I want to share about is it's in reference to House Bill 4030. That's about $100 million that the state legislature allocated for retention and recruitment grants that the districts all have an equal opportunity to apply for. We're in dialogue right now for how best to do, I think, what I would call is kind of problem solving. How do we retain the folks we have, and how do we find ways to recruit people that we need to come to the district? And we talk about this often as part of one of our goals is to diversify our workforce. And so what are some solutions that we can come up with that creatively could access those dollars? We could potentially have access to maybe about $2 million if we were approved for a grant, which we're dialoguing right now deeply. The one nerve-wracking part of that is we got the rules on, I think it was May 6th. That grant is due on May 31st. And so we've got to turn that around very, very quickly. And so there's a whole lot of conversations going on about what it might look like for us to submit an application for that. But stay tuned. We're hopeful. And then I think last but not least, I just want to put on your a reminder on your calendars that if you're available on May 19th, at the end of the day, we'll be celebrating excellence in education, and we'll be notifying our finalists for both classified and certified award winners for that. That'll be some number. Those haven't been chosen yet. Some number that is, I guess, in the past has varied between 6 and 8 classified staff members and 6 and 8 certified staff members, and those will go into next year being finalists, and we will name the finalists next fall for those positions, along with the Excellence in Education Administrator of the Year next fall as well. And so that kickoff activity is May 19th, 5:30 at Mountain View High School. Thank you. Everybody's nodding like that. Yes, you didn't mess that up. So 5 o'clock at Mountain View High School. So, and then last but not least, I didn't talk about this, but just a wonderful first time celebration yesterday, also at Mountain View High School, celebrating our students. And actually we invited students in the region to attend for military recognition night. I think it's the first one, at least in recent history, and maybe the first one overall, in which we had the opportunity to celebrate those students who have signed up and enlisted in our armed forces. And just a really fun opportunity, a lot of smiles. And I think it was nice to feel something that felt familiar when we're celebrating our students back in an environment where a lot of educators and a lot of recruiters and a lot of kids with a lot of smiles. So exciting to do those kinds of things this time of the year. That's it for my report.
Thank you. We will now move into item number 9, which is our board policies in review. Board policies. The board policies in review are typically, sorry, I'm bouncing around. The board policies that come up for review are ones that are required for our board to review and approve, as opposed to administrative policies, which are brought to us for our own edification and for us to know about, provide feedback on, but that we do not need to approve. I will hand this over to Superintendent Cook to walk us through those items.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. There are 4 policies that our team is presenting to the board for consideration and review for you all to discuss. The first one is GBJ-BP, Weapons in Schools. In that particular policy, the language has been updated to align with KGBB-BP, the prohibition of firearms. Essentially, we are adding the cross-references to that policy as well. Very simple changes, but would require your approval. The second one is Governance Process 3, the Board Code of Conduct. As you'll see later in the evening, we're adding a social media policy to administrative policies, and we are suggesting that we align the board governance policies to align with those social media processes and procedures, similarly that we would have for staff. And so those suggested guidelines are listed out for your consideration as well. The third one is governance process number 5, board member roles. And this is simply a clarification of the chairperson's term length has been added, as well as reference to ORS 332-040 for board election of officers in alignment with the calendar year of when officers are elected and how often that they can serve in that capacity. The fourth one is governance process 6, which is updated time frame for the Board of Election of Officers in alignment with GP5, which I just previously mentioned, and how those board member roles are assigned and established. We've actually recommended scratching off a co-chair, as we already have a chair and a vice chair in those roles, and we would suggest those clarifications. Also, clarification of guidelines and a process for public to share feedback while in attendance at public meetings of the board. And I think the word is objective criticism. I think we're expanding that to just include the word feedback in there. And we're glad to take comments or questions. I think if you'd like to see edits to any of those things, we would be glad to take that feedback, or if you want to consider that, we'd love to send this out for review. And if you would rather have those feedback added before, bring it back. We're open to those suggestions as well.
On GP5, I would like to disagree with the proposed change to number 3, which reads, develop in coordination with the vice chair and superintendent and consistent with the interests of the board, agendas for board meetings, any agenda item requested by at least, it used to be 3, now the suggestion is 4 members of the board will be placed on the agenda. It's my opinion that although it makes sense that a majority needs to approve items, that if we change this to 4, we would be taking away the voice of a minority group on the board, which could consist of many different minority identities, and that they would not even have the opportunity to bring something up for discussion, which feels to me like not a good choice for our board.
I echo those concerns and I agree.
Is there feedback from other board members on that piece? Because this is a discussion that we need to have in public. So I'd love to hear from others if there is a strong opinion on 3 versus 4.
I'm in agreement with 3 as well, because I think, like you said, if you have to wait for the majority to be able to talk about something, that it doesn't allow any other voices to be heard. So I'm in agreement with the keep it at 3 if I can.
My only comment is that in GP6, we also have the opportunity for 3 members of the board can call or request a special meeting. I'd like to have that changed to 4.
I would support that.
Yeah, I would support that as well. I think it is important for a minority to be able to speak. However, I think from what I've heard from people, the concern to going to 4 is that you don't want a meeting derailed by a minority. So I don't know if you can't limit speech, obviously, or agenda or time. But if you allow a minority to put something on the agenda, that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a prolonged discussion, correct? If the majority is opposed to it. So I guess that would be kind of a thought process to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think it is a thought process. So I've even noticed this tonight in facilitating this meeting. We actually don't follow Robert's Rules of Order to a T. And so I typically just look at you guys to see who wants to speak, but I don't call on people to speak. And typically under Robert's Rules of Order, no board member speaks until the chair has acknowledged them or ceded the floor to them. And so the question of having a meeting derailed, the counterbalance to that is actually following Robert's Rules of Order. And that's a pretty easy switch. I kind of, unofficially do that just by looking down the line, and I can see and I kind of do the eye thing of who wants to speak. But yeah, I think that maybe I continue to tighten following Robert's Rules of Order. And then what I'm hearing from our board in this discussion is that that more board members than not are inclined to keep it at 3, so that for adding things to an agenda, but are also inclined to support Shirley's request that it is 4, that it is a majority if it is calling a special meeting. Does that sound, do I have that?
Yes, I agree with that.
So can I just clarify, we're talking about how you would like to send this out into the public for review, the language, those small changes potentially for now. collect feedback from the community, and then we would be bringing this back to you for your consideration and potentially further discussion on that. So,
and I will also be doing some additional research and calling other boards and finding out how it's worked either way during that time period.
Yeah, and I think that Carrie is a piece and something that I would like to do during the review process. I wanted to reach out to the other kind of the districts that are most like us, so the ones that are 3 bigger and 3 smaller than us, and see what their policies are. And we've really, as we've been tuning these policies, and thank you to everybody, Janet, Kinsey, Andrea, like everybody that's been working on tightening policies, but we do really try and look, and a lot of the recommendations that we've made, and one in here in GP3 as well, are based, they're based on what we're seeing as best practice from other districts. And so really I would be curious to see on that 3 versus 4, what the other districts in the state use.
I would also suggest that we might contact OSBA. Their policy services, they have pretty well collected and produced reports on almost any kind of governance policy. And it might be worth a check just to see what they would recommend or what they are seeing in other districts.
And I just pulled up the Roberts Rules from OSBA and just noted that it says it's the responsibility of all members of the board to address one item at a time, extend courtesy and fairness to all, let the majority rule, and guarantee the rights of the minority. And so I think that's our goal with the policy, and it's just figuring out what actually gets us closest, because there's always unintended consequences with any decision.
Absolutely. What I would suggest right now, because this is just, we're bringing the policies forward, we will go through the full process. What I would suggest right now is leaving the suggestion for 3 to 4. That doesn't mean that it's in place, but it allows us to get feedback from the public on what they think about that as well, and for us to do more research. So leave that when it goes out to the public. But to add the switch from 3 to 4 in terms of scheduling a board meeting, an additional board meeting. And again, not because we will, but because that gives the public the opportunity to weigh in on that piece. Great. Thank you. Then we will move into agenda item number 10, Administrative Policy and Regulation Report. Executive Limitation 12 requires the superintendent to amend administrative policies to comply with local, state, and federal law, provide the school board with information regarding substantive changes made to policies, and create policies consistent with new laws. I will now turn to Dr. Cook to present the administrative policies and regulations the district is reviewing and adopting.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. We have 3 policies that are currently administrative policies that are going out for review. The first one is FKA-AR, Guidelines for Volunteer Facility Improvement Projects, has been updated. As you know, we brought the memorial policy, FFA-AR, last month, and we're aligning the language on volunteer facility improvement projects to the language that we pushed out for the memorial policy. Those are also in alignment with current practices. The second policy that we're pushing out right now, I mentioned earlier, GCAB-AP, Social Media Use and Expectations. This is a new policy. It is there to facilitate the effective use of social media to further educational goals of the district while ensuring there are proper safeguards in place. This policy applies to Ben Lapine students, employees, volunteers, contractors, and other personnel acting in an official capacity on behalf of Ben Lapine schools when using social media for official district purposes, and whether or not such occurrence is on officially sanctioned Ben Lapine school social media sites or other sites. This would not reach into personal social media accounts. However, there are some crossovers with ethics rules and expectations with that as well. But this policy speaks specifically to when people are serving in official capacity for the district. The third one is IGB, AR, choice option schools and programs, attendance areas and in-district transfers continue to be in review. As a matter of fact, we just had a very deep and deliberate conversation yesterday and today about the process for ACR options. Additional feedback on these regulations are still not being requested. In fact, we will probably sit on these at least one more month and then be bringing back some feedback for you as those are under consideration. We'd be pushing these out for public feedback. For the next 30 days, we will accept feedback on these policies and bring them back to you. Or the feedback will be accepted through Tuesday, May 24th. And we will bring that feedback, if any, we get back to you for consideration.
Are there any questions or discussion? All right. Then we will move into item number 11, which is board comments. And we will...
Item 10B.
Oh, I'm so sorry. 10B. We will move into administrative policies and regulations for adoption. So not just the ones in review. And again, Superintendent Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. We have one policy that's coming back from review, and that's policy FFA-AR, the memorials policy. That policy was pushed out for 30 days. No public comment was received, and we'll go into that policy will go into adoption starting tomorrow morning.
Thank you. And now, for real, we will go into item number 11, board comments. I will go just from my right down the line, and people can make comment if they choose and may pass if they would like to.
I do not want to be dropping a bomb right now because I know we've talked about not using board comment for that. So I'm going to say however, and I know that sounds bad. But one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and we heard it in our Youth Truth Survey, and Dr. Cook and I have had many conversations about this because it's something I feel very passionate about, is academic excellence. And I've heard over the last several weeks from a colleague who chose not to move out of state because they did not feel that their students' academic experience in our schools would allow them to be successful in another state that has better standards. She said her students are A and B students here, and they would be B and C students, so she was not comfortable moving them to a high school out of state. I heard from a performing arts program that they needed to cut a class because of enrollment, and they chose to cut the advanced coursework because that had the lowest enrollment. I had an elementary school student say to me the only learning they felt like they were doing was on Lexia and Dreambox because that was adapted to their level. I had another parent tell me that their student's high school did not have any advanced coursework at the 9th and 10th grade level. I think as a board, we need to be having those conversations. We have never heard, as far as I've been on the board, and I don't know how long, Carrie, if you've ever heard this conversation, the difference in our AP classes between each high school, the difference in programs between each high school, how our tag students are served in non-tag programs, since that's a very narrow window. And I really think our community and our students, and we heard this in Youth Truth, deserve to know this data. So don't want to drop that bomb, but I didn't have a chance during board chair report to say anything about those comments. And I would really like us to be having that conversation as a board.
Just that my child's school started allowing parent volunteers again, and so I've had the opportunity to volunteer in my older daughter's classroom, and will be doing so for the rest of the year. And it has just been so wonderful to be back in the classroom, meeting my child's classmates and watching her amazing teacher in action and providing a little bit of desperately needed support for our teachers. So hopefully if other schools are allowing that as well, I really encourage people to check with your teacher and see if they're ready for volunteers. It's been a highlight for sure.
As you know, I'm the board rep on the Ben Lapine Education Foundation, and they are currently having one of their main fundraisers right now, and it's actually virtual, so you can all go online right now and buy a raffle ticket. They are one raffle ticket for $25 or 5 for $100, and all of the funds raised goes towards scholarships and classroom grants for educators. They're doing phenomenal work distributing funds into our district, into our classrooms, support our educators and students. The raffle is their cute bags and then other little local goods and services. So you can go on the Ben Lapine Education Foundation website if you want to look in. There's like a QR code that you can scan and access all of the information there.
Thank you. I'd just like to note that on the first day that we were allowing volunteers back in schools, we had a visit from our state department. I'm not sure what his title is now. Colgill?
Deputy Superintendent of Public Education.
There we go, Deputy Superintendent. And to our surprise, well, to most of our surprises, Governor Kate Brown also came and visited North Star Elementary School. So it was quite a day, and again, to celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week. And I thought it was pretty amazing. Now, Governor Kate is not re-upping. So she was not there to do a political speech or support, but she pushed the coffee cart around and handed out cups of coffee made to request to several of the teachers at North Star. It was really fun. Thank you.
Oh, one more, sorry. The raffle ends on Friday. So you have to do it by then. Okay, I'm done.
Great, thank you. For my own board comments, I'd like to say something that I've done. Ironically, Shamika, one of the things that I did was meet with someone who's being recruited to serve on the board of the Education Foundation and wanted to hear about the work that the Education Foundation and the district do together, and I'm really hoping she joins their board. I also want to note that right now there are 3 Summit and 4 Mountain View baseball players that went to the Little League World Series that are playing together. That is where my family is right now, watching that kind of epic last time that those kids get to play with each other. It's pretty cool. I want to give a couple of appreciations, I said during their presentations, but just the work that went in that the committee has done for the ELA adoption and all of that groundwork, as well as all of the work that our lead cohort and our entire department are doing with Kenzie Martin to continue to work on diversity, equity, and inclusion and really creating senses of belonging for our students. And then finally, I want to appreciate Steve because I realized I think I was supposed to read the overview of all of the board policies under review, and I dished it to him. So thank you for picking that up. And note to self, I have to read those next time. So with that, we'll move to item number 12, which is our adjournment. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.